It is not about putting in more time practicing TIG welding. It is not about needing the nicest gear to use. It is not some trick or some hack that's gonna get you doing TIG welds like these. But today, these are certainly 3 really important things that are gonna get you pointed in the right direction so you can get better results with TIG welding. All right, I argue that this is one of the most important parts of anybody's practice session. And this is to have a specific and set plan before you start practicing. That's right, important thing is I said before you start practicing. So when I first started to learn how to TIG weld, I wanted to get really good, and I wanted to get really good in a hurry. So I practiced over and over multiple times a day, any chance I could. I was excited. But with this approach, there is one major problem. In doing so, I wasn't practicing the right things. During my practice sessions, I would get frustrated and really discouraged with myself. I've told the story before, I did not have anybody to teach me. I had to figure it out myself. So in doing so, getting frustrated and discouraged, especially because I was thinking about all the time I was spending practicing, I wasn't getting any better. And unfortunately, this is way too common. I see this far too often. So looking at these here, these are some of the most common joints that people are gonna get started with trying to learn. Yes, they look fun, they look great, but these are difficult. When you are first trying to learn how to TIG weld, whether it's stainless steel or aluminum TIG welding, there are fundamental exercises that I teach to my students, and these are so important to start with. There are techniques to the manipulation of the torch as well as the filler material itself. Without a basic understanding on how to learn these things in simple exercises at the beginning, trying to learn more advanced joints like these here, this is gonna make for a very frustrating time while somebody is starting to learn. And when getting frustrated or overwhelmed with all the different variables that somebody has to learn, this can lead to somebody getting discouraged and unfortunately quitting. Like I said, I see this all the time. Having a plan when you sit down for a practice session, whether you are working on beginner or fundamental exercises, or a way to challenge yourself to try something a little more difficult, without clear goals of what you are trying to accomplish in a practice session, this can lead to somebody getting a little bit lost, as well as not having a clear sense of what you're trying to achieve when you sit down for a practice session. So when the students in my online TIG welding program get ready to go in for a practice session, working with me, I always want to provide a clear and concise plan of exactly what we're working on that day. And when we do this, we keep it simple. We aren't gonna set up for a dozen different joints or practicing multiple positions at once. So for example, if you are first learning, I always recommend starting out with learning stuff on flat plate. Practicing passes, running stuff on flat plate. This is a great way for somebody to perfect details like their overall size, controlling their width as they travel across a pass, as well as maintaining a consistent amount of reinforcement. Practicing these in simple steps, this is going to give you a much better understanding so that at that point, when you move on to the next joint in your progression, things at this point are going to make way more sense. Make sense? So for example, when somebody is trying to learn something a little more challenging, like a lap joint or like a fillet joint or something like that, somebody's gonna have a heck of a time right out of the gate trying to control the important variables, like we talked about, overall width of profile, as well as consistency of filler material. If people have not practiced these fundamentals in a controlled and more approachable situation, for example, working with it on a flat piece of plate, it's gonna be really difficult to get all of these things all at once on a more challenging joint. So identify what you are going to work on before you go in for a practice session. Working on a flat piece of plate like this, are you able to keep things consistent like what you're looking at here? This might be a great way to work on these things at this point here. Keeping it simple and only working on 1 or 2 exercises at the most in one practice session. This is gonna be a way to make the most out of the time you spend practicing, as well as save yourself a ton of practice material. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to go over here, and this is something again that I stress is very important for all the students in my program, and this is learning how to break down your own work. All right, so when you finish TIG welding a pass, what's the first thing you do when you finish? From my experience, when I first started to learn how to TIG weld, I would flip up my mask, I would take a look at it, I would kind of think about what it was supposed to look like, I would look at what I just did, I would say, oh shit, and then flip my hood down and try again. So only later in my career of TIG welding production did I properly learn how to actually break down my own work. And in doing so, I could at that point make adjustments on the fly. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about making the most out of every practice session. Not only do we want to have a clear plan of what we are practicing during the session, we also want to have a clear plan for every time we flip down our welding mask. Where are we going to get hints on what to do for the next welding pass? From the pass previous to that one. We want to look at the previous pass and see if there is any adjustments that we can make. And then when we figured out a few things that we can make as far as adjustments, we could flip our mask down again and start welding, knowing we have a clear plan of exactly what we're looking for with that one. Take a close look at what you see, especially when working on exercises, working on flat plate. This is a golden opportunity to break down every single detail. So for example, one of the things that my students and I work on early in the program, we want to get perfect starts at the beginning of every single pass, or the stop start in the center as we connect different passes. Ooh, my tummy. Maintaining consistency with our stepping distances and stepping pattern, as well as the reinforcement or the amount of filler material we are using. If somebody finishes a pass and starts to see some edges that look like this here, see how the filler material has not fully blended into the base material? Okay, cool. Taking a look at this, we can identify that that's a problem here for sure. But let me ask you another question here that I teach my students. Why is this problem happening? So it's one thing to take a look and see that something is happening, but learning why these things are happening and what we can do to make adjustments on the fly, this is where the real progression happens. For example, taking a look at this pass again here, we can see that the distance of stepping on this pass is simply just a little bit too tight. The amount of heat used may be completely fine in relation to the amount of filler material that's being used, but unfortunately by tightening up a stepping pattern, this is going to cause overcrowding and overfilling, and we soon are going to see edges that unfortunately look like this. When you finish a pass, have a good look at it. Obviously, don't take a ton of time, don't go crazy on it, but don't just glance at it, look at it, shrug your shoulders, and then get back to work. You're missing an opportunity. This is how you're going to make the most out of a practice session, and you're going to be able to progress much quicker. Okay, let's get into our most important one here. And this is to have materials or references to check in with as you are practicing. Now, this is something I did not have when I first started welding. Like I talked about, I had to figure out everything on the fly all by myself. It was like 2002 or 2003, so there wasn't even such a thing as YouTube at the time. How crazy is that? I had absolutely nothing to compare any of my work to. I had nothing to check and see if I was on track or not. Like I said, I had nobody there to help me out. I was all by myself. So having something like some kind of material or references to keep you on track or give you ways that you can break down your own work, nowadays it has never been a better time to take advantage of opportunities for this stuff. At any time with the phone you're watching right now or the computer you're chilling in front of right now, you could jump on YouTube or whatever and you can see all kinds of good instruction. Great examples of what things should look like. There's countless blogs, there's countless websites, forums, there's apps, there's all kinds of different things you can get for your phone now. It's never been as good of a time to have resources to help you practice. So I run the most in-depth and complete TIG welding program online. It's specifically designed to give somebody all the resources that they need to learn from. And my program also comes with a downloadable textbook that's just shy of 200 pages. This textbook is meant to accompany every lesson in the program. Essentially, anybody can walk into a practice session and they will know exactly what they're working on, exactly what they're looking for in each exercise, as well as having a clear breakdown of every problem they may encounter, having a clear and concise layout of exactly where to start and when it is appropriate to move ahead to the next lesson. This is something I genuinely wish that I had when I first started welding. I didn't have time to go to school, I didn't really have anybody to teach me, but I really wanted to learn. While my program may not be for everybody, there are tons of other resources that somebody can turn to at any point. Like I said, there's different YouTube channels. You can check out other YouTube channels besides mine, it's all good. There's websites, blogs, forums. It's never been a better time to learn in the comfort of your own shop. So we have been over 3 very important things here. The first is going into a practice session with a clear plan. We want to make sure you don't waste any time or materials when you go into practice. The first step was very important. The second tip we went over was to strategically break down your own work. This way you're going to have a clear idea of what is going on after you finish a weld. Then when you flip down your hood for the next pass, you got a plan. And the third thing we went over was to have good practice reference materials and stuff to basically check in with as you practice, so that when you are practicing, you know exactly what you're looking for and how to overcome obstacles as you may face them as you're practicing. In the description below, there are links to go further with all of this stuff. The first 2 links that you see there are going to take you to episodes that are going to take you much further into detail with the first 2 points I mentioned here. The third link that you're going to see there is going to take you to another episode, and this episode is special. This one is actually accompanied by some free textbook pages you can download from that episode. That way when you watch that episode, you have something to follow along with. Like I said, practice materials to check in with. This way somebody can print stuff out like that, and when they go in for a practice session, they can take it with them. So again, that third link down below is a very important one. Get those textbook pages. So how is this for a plan for everybody out there learning right now? Go watch those episodes next and get yourself some learning material for free. Do a random act of kindness for a stranger today. My name is Dusty. Fill and chill. We will talk soon. Peace.